Throughout most of history, leisure was a rare luxury. Working from dawn to dusk just to survive was the lot of almost all men, women, and children until a few centuries ago. With the onset of the Second Industrial Revolution in the late 19th century and the accompanying division of labor, came its leisure revolution. Not only did this period of rapid industrial development bring many from villages to large cities in search of work, but for the first time in history, we had planned free time in which a person could engage in any activity at their discretion. After more than a century has passed since this leisure revolution, the fruits of civilization have become incredibly rich and leisure has become even more accessible than ever before. Perhaps more than ever before in the history of civilization, the average person is free from the daily struggle for survival. But with this newfound freedom, a key question arises for each of us: what are we free for? In other words, how are we going to use our available time that is not devoted to meeting our basic life needs? Few people seriously consider these things. Instead, like in many important questions about how to live, most people unconsciously conform and assume that their leisure time is best spent in passive rest, relaxing and passively consuming, and as a result, people's lives acquire a similar form and follow a course similar to that described by 20th century philosopher Richard Taylor. Most people, in the simplest sense, are very limited. They spend their time day after day in empty and passive activities, simply observing things from the sidelines, playing TV games however they like, or filling their hours with conversations that are not significant. And at arrivals and departures, about who does what, the weather, things that are forgotten almost immediately after they are mentioned. They have no ambitions for themselves, except to survive another day, doing more or less what they didn't do yesterday. They go through the stage of life, leaving everything exactly as it was when they entered, achieving nothing, striving for nothing, never having deep or even original thoughts. This is what is familiar, generally accepted, typical, and truly normal. Few really rise above such a difficult existence. Some may say that there is nothing wrong with such a normal existence. Modern life is highly dynamic and stressful. Problems with mental health are increasing, and perhaps we need to spend more and more time in peace and relaxation. However, the productive English writer of the 20th century, Colin Wilson, himself disagreed with this view. Excessive idleness and passivity do not strengthen mental health, but on the contrary, they give rise to a sense of unhappiness and a multitude of psychological problems. Wilson came to this conclusion early in his life. In his autobiography, Dreaming of Some Goal, he notes that as a teenager, he struggled with bouts of depression and sympathized with the wisdom contained in the book, Vanity of Vanities. However, Wilson had a penetrating mind and intended to find out why he always felt so depressed. He began to notice that his bouts of depression were usually preceded by long periods of passivity, when he did not devote his days to interesting tasks, challenges, and problems that required solving. He found that the depressive mood soon attacked him through the misty haze of his perceptions and made him pessimistic about his condition. As the saying goes, idle mind is the devil's workshop. As Woolf writes, boredom and stagnation precede mental illness, and they spread like a stagnant pond in China. If the connection between passivity and mental illness, which Wilson discovered, exists, then we are faced with the following choice: we can waste our leisure time on empty activities, leave our own untapped potential untouched, and bring ourselves closer to mental illness, or we can strive to spend most of our free time creating, exploring, learning, accomplishing tasks, challenging our abilities, and improving our talents. Although this option requires perseverance, struggle, and sacrificing short-term pleasures in favor of personal growth, the rewards will be mental health and personality development, and it is definitely worth the effort. A mentally healthy person writes with their soul. They are the ones who are used to engaging the real depths of their life resources. On the contrary, a person who allows their mind to be idle and only exerts superficial effort begins to suffer from problems with their life, causing internal cycles of neurosis. It is a feeling of detachment from their own strength. But what if the discovery of the mental connection between passivity and depression applies not to everyone, but only to a minority, like Wilson, who has an exceptionally strong inclination towards creativity? Perhaps for some people, passivity does not cause the suffering it caused Wilson. Does this mean that attempting to use our free time for creative activity is a waste of time and energy? In his book, Restoring Pride, Richard Taylor provides a compelling argument for why the effort to do and create something is always worth the effort. As he explains, such efforts increase our chances of achieving the rare state of pride. Taylor defines pride as justified self-love and notes that although many people claim to love themselves, their so-called self-love is often not pride but rather narcissism or a shield of arrogance used to avoid deep insecurity and self-loathing. So, he recommends developing exceptional skills in a specific area and thus achieving individual mastery and excellence that will distinguish a person from others. The idea that some people excel over others may sound offensive in our days. As Taylor suggests, many now confuse equal rights with equal value. But the fact that every person has natural rights from birth and should have equal rights before the law does not mean that every person has the same value. This was self-evident for ancient Greeks. They recognized that although most people devote their lives to fitting into the herd, relatively few cultivate some extraordinary virtue or particularly skillful creation of exceptional value, or follow the path of achieving individual greatness independently of the support, applause, or opinions of others. And as Euripides notes, only such people who excel over others in something are the only ones who can love themselves without false pretense. Therefore, the next time we find ourselves with free time and the freedom to choose what to do, we should not reflexively reach for the TV remote, sit passively, endure the internet and chat about superficial topics, but ask ourselves whether these momentary conveniences and pleasures provided by such meaningless activities are worth our life resources, because even if our passivity does not sow seeds of pessimism and depression in us, this passivity undoubtedly diminishes our value as human beings and reduces our chances of ever achieving the love for ourselves that accompanies genuine pride. Compose the text correctly and put all punctuation marks, as Taylor put it. Undoubtedly, some people are born and destined to be ordinary, to live their lives without any significant purpose. But this is relatively rare. Most people have the ability to be creative, and for some, in a godlike degree. But many, perhaps even the majority, content themselves with fleeting pleasures and cater to the animal parts of our nature. Many people will consider their lives successful if they go through it with a minimum of pain and suffering, with some variety of one pleasant moment to another. And so day after day, with everyone's approval, and despite the fact that these same people often have the ability to do what no other person has ever done before them, they simply do what others have done before, often safely and conveniently. But to do something truly original and to do it well, regardless of whether others appreciate it or not, is what a person really is. And this choice is the only thing that justifies such a love of oneself that is called pride.